super excited to come back for Point of Grace because I was part of it, as Pastor mentioned. So maybe sometime in the future you guys will be coming back and speaking and talking about your life story as well. I had no idea I would ever be coming back and talking about singleness of all things, so who knows what will happen. It's very exciting. So I will introduce myself, and this is cool because there's a screen right there, so I don't have to turn around. I got a degree in electrical engineering and also technical communications at MSOE. And I just wanted to ask, what week are you guys in at MSOE right now? The second one? Okay, so you guys feel pretty good right now. It's not super overwhelming. That's good. How many of you feel very stressed out by MSOE sometimes? Yeah, okay. I was gonna say, if I was the only one, I feel pretty bad. So I just wanna give you guys a little bit of a light at the end of the tunnel because all of this work is gonna pay off, it's gonna get better. So after I graduated from MSOE, I went backpacking through Europe for a month and a half, and then I started my first job as a patent engineer where I worked at a law firm and wrote patents for a year and learned about all the cool latest technology. And then after a year, I decided that it is super boring to actually write patents. I don't know if you guys have ever tried to read one, but it is the worst form of writing ever. So I moved to Rockwell Automation, where I became a product marketing engineer. And I worked on lots of products that help automate things like roller coasters or factories or different things like that. And I worked on the stuff that ensured things didn't start on fire or blow up or things like that. So very important piece of that. And then about a year and a half ago, I transitioned over to marketing, where I became a global commercial programs manager. And I advertise for about 20% of Rockwell, and I work with teams all across the world. I get to come up with a strategy, and then it's implemented all across the world, so I get to work with people all over, and it is super, super fun. So if you guys feel like, yeah, do you have a question?
Did I get that right? So you went engineering, and you're now all the way to marketing?
Yes. I went to the dark side of marketing is what the engineers will normally say, but I might go back. We'll see what happens. I don't know. But it's very, very fun. So if you guys are struggling, just know that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. You will get into your job, and it will be so easy compared to MSOE. That's what I found. Like, you put in so much work into your tests, and every day of work is just a walk in the park compared to that. And you got paid for what you're doing, so it will get better. Hang in there. It's going to be good. Okay, so tonight I am going to be talking about a lot of things that are very personal and some awkward stories and things that I normally don't tell people when I meet them for like a year or 10 years or never, but I'm going to be telling you guys about this stuff. So I want to get to know you guys a little bit so that I don't feel as awkward telling you guys this stuff. So first of all, what majors are you? How many of you are engineers? Okay. How many are nursing students? Yeah, okay. Business students? Okay. And then technical communications was what it was called when I was there, but is there something else? It's like user interface or something? Oh, is it like user interface? You're an engineer. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Okay. What are you? Oh, that's a newer one, isn't it? Yeah, that's a good program too. That's awesome. Okay, now I'm going to ask the more difficult question of how many people in the room are married. I'm going to look over in this direction more. Okay. How many people are engaged? Is there anyone? Nice, very nice. Thank you to all of you people who have come. And how many people are in relationships right now? Okay, nice. So thank you, everyone. It's really nice that you've come here and care about people who are in different situations than you are in. So I'm already learning a lot about you, that you are very wonderful people. Okay, how many people are single? Woo! Okay, there's no one left. Normally I'd ask how many of you don't know what your relationship status is, because I've been there before, but it seems like no one falls into that. So congratulations, that's good. Okay, so today I am here to talk about singleness, or as I like to call it, being on the B team. A lot of times it feels like people who are in relationships are on the A team. They have graduated onto something bigger and better and are getting married, they are having children, all of these great things. And then us on the B team, we're just kind of celebrating all the things that they're going through and wondering, when are we going to make it there ourselves? So there's a lot of hard things about singleness, and I have been single for many, many years. So I want to ask you guys what you think some of the hard things are about being single. So just shout them out. It's kind of hard for me to hear, but just shout them very loudly if you have anything. Yeah. Okay, yes, and people online, if you want to answer these questions, put in the chat, and someone can read them to me, and I can repeat them. So, anything hard about being single? You guys have it mastered, and I don't even need to tell you anything. Okay, well, I will go through what my list is. I have 9 things on my list, and there's many, many more. So, since I have very bad vision, I'm going to read this one. Feeling like I have done something wrong to be single. So I think as I saw all these people who were my friends get into relationships and I didn't get into a relationship, I felt like, what did I do wrong? Where did I miss the sign up that kept me in this place where I'm single? Wishing I could just be happy like everyone else. It's very sad and lonely to be single sometimes, and I wish I could just be like everyone else who's in a relationship. Questioning if God loves me. Why is he letting this be the reality of my life? If God can create a man out of dust, is it that hard to ask him to bring me a boyfriend? I mean, it doesn't seem that difficult. Wondering if I will ever get married and have kids like I've always longed for. Tired of feeling like the 3rd wheel, or 5th wheel, or 7th wheel, or any odd number of wheels. Sick of spending free time alone. Wishing I had a significant other to share news with, help with my problems, and truly understand me. I think this is the thing that weighed on me the most. Like, every single one of my friends and family members had that special person. And no matter what, I was always number 2 because they had a number 1, but I didn't have a number 1 to tell all these things to. So that has weighed on me a lot. Having jealousy of my friends' relationships, not something that I like to admit, but it is definitely true. Waiting for life to begin at marriage. So a lot of times I've thought, okay, I will start being happy and live out all my dreams and have all these cool things happen when I get married, but they're not going to happen before. So it's hard to not put yourself in that mindset sometimes. Feeling angry and entrusting God for allowing me to suffer alone for so long. Like, why are you letting me go through this, God? I don't understand. And then fear of being single for the rest of my life. I know when I first became single for what was a very long period of time, lots of kind people came to me and they're like, oh, just wait, there's this person for you and you just gotta trust God and wait until it happens. And that was very comforting to me at the beginning of my singleness. But as time went by, I started opening the Bible and actually looking at what God promises. And I realized that there is no Bible passage that says, I know the plans I have for you, plans to give you a spouse in the future. God doesn't promise us that we're ever going to get married, and I think that that's like a really, really hard thing to accept when you desire marriage so much. So I struggled so much with all of these things that I decided to write a book to try to figure them all out. So this is my book, You Only Have a Single Life to Live, and unfortunately it's not published yet. I am working on getting it published. And the entire book is written to answer the question, if I am single and a Christian and absolutely hate being single, or just don't like it, what am I supposed to do with my life? Why am I here? Why is God letting me go through this? So I wrestled with all those bullet points and I struggled with this stuff, and I dove into the Bible and saw what the answers were. So this is a synopsis of what my book is. Every single chapter takes a person who is single from the Bible and applies the lessons of their life to 2021 and being single. If you look through the list, some of the people might not be single for sure, but it never says they were married, so I just fit them into the theme and figured it was okay. So for today, since I can't go through everything, I'm just going to go through chapter 1, which is identity, and we already got a really good preview from Pastor on what that message is going to be. And then I'm going to go through chapter 3 as well, and then I'm going to wrap up by just giving basically the Reader's Digest, very quick version of my book, and tips from that. So we will start off with identity. You guys all should have papers. Yes. Okay. So I'm going to ask the same question that Pastor asked of what do you guys place your identity in? So I have a few lines there where I just want you to be really honest with yourself and think about what separates me from everyone else. Why am I unique? Why am I not like the billions of other people in the world? What are the good things? Maybe what are the bad things that have influenced me? Like someone called me unathletic when I was young, and that has stuck with me ever since. I want you guys just to take a minute and jot down those things. And I'll grab a drink of water while you think about it. Okay, I see people pausing at least, so we'll just stop right now. Are there any brave souls who are willing to share a couple things on your identity list? No, I'm seeing people kind of cringe. Anyone? No? Okay. Well, I have my identity list from when I was sitting in college and I was your guys' age, so I will share mine. So here is what my identity list was. So the very first thing, which I should have written in big letters, was my relationship. That was the reason that I thought I was important. It was because someone loves me, and I thought that was awesome, and I thought that made me unique, and that made me cool, and all sorts of things, and that's why I mattered. I'll get into that in a second. Then I thought that my own abilities made me unique. So I was a very hard worker. I thought that if something needed to get done, I could get it done, and I could rely on myself. So I was very proud of that fact. And then third was my family. Ever since I was a very little girl, I remember being super proud of the fact that I was a Schermerhorn, and that was my dad, and that was my mom, and that was my brother, and that was my sister, and I was part of that family. And I thought that was so cool, and that stuck with me for a very long time. And then for being smart, which I shouldn't have thought because I went to MSOE and then I was not smart at all. But I prided myself in the fact that I was a very good student and could work hard and be smart, so to say. I later found out that was not true. So I will share my story. There we go. So what happened with my identity list. So freshman year of college, I went to MSOE, like I said, and I met a guy, and he kind of checked all the boxes of what I was looking for in a guy. So he was super Christian, so to say. He went on lots of mission trips and loved talking about his faith and all of those things. He was smart. He was becoming an engineer. He was also creative. And I thought that things were really, really good. So I really liked him. It took him a few months to feel the same way about me. But then we eventually started dating, and we made it through many years of MSOE and all of the ups and downs and stress and craziness of going to college there. So then as we kind of reached the end of MSOE, we started planning what we wanted to do for the future. And we decided that we wanted to take the next step. And before I get into this, I know you just got engaged. My story is not a reflection of what's going to happen to you, so don't take this personally, just so you know. So we decided to become engaged, and we planned pretty much everything for our lives, like when we were going to get married, where we were going to live, what jobs we were going to have, when we were going to have kids, how many kids we were going to have. We planned out everything. So then he proposed to me, and we planned our whole wedding, and we're going to get married when we graduated. But a few months before we were supposed to get married, we got these books from our photographer, of all things, and it was these fun books that said, "How well do you know your fiance?" So we started filling out these books, and it asked all these questions where you're supposed to know the answers about the other person. So one of the questions that came up for me was, he has gotten over an addiction. And I was like, yes he has, because I knew he had struggled with something when we started dating. And then we both decided we would not get married, we would not get engaged until that was over. But he told me in that moment that no, he had not gotten past his addiction, and it was actually a lot worse than it had ever been, and he had been lying to me for a long time because he wanted to get married to me and knew that I wouldn't get married unless that was a thing that was out of the picture. So I was absolutely devastated. I could not believe that he had lied to me about this, and everything I thought we had was kind of in question then. So we tried to make it work for a long time. We tried to push through the next couple months and see, should we get married, should we not get married? But then one day he came to me and he said, you know what, God made me this way, this is how I am, he's not changing me, so this is not a sin, and it's your fault that you have a problem with this, other people would not. And that was kind of the slap in the face I needed to end that relationship. So I was obviously left very, very devastated, and the first thing on my identity list was completely wiped out, and I was left in a place I never thought I would be again, and that was being single, and I hated it, absolutely hated it. But then, at the same time, a ton of other crazy things happened, like within a month of all of this. So one day I was walking in MSOE, and I knew I was under a lot of stress because it's MSOE, and then my relationship was falling apart. And I was looking at people, and their heads were like really tiny, and their bodies were really, really big. And I just thought, like, I am under some weird stress and hallucinating. I don't know what's going on. But I took some tests, and I found out that I had a few eye diseases. So if you look at the screen here, the thing on the left should look like straight lines up and down, and if it doesn't, you should go to an eye doctor immediately. The thing on the other side is what it looked like outside of my vision. Thankfully, only one eye, not both of the eyes, but basically a blood vessel was growing through the center of my eye, and then I couldn't see, and then there was fluid leaking behind my retina, so everything kind of looked like a funhouse mirror. So that was not great, and as I was doing tests for this, I had a seizure and ended up in the emergency room. My doctor called me. He told me I had to get shots in my eye every month to fix this thing. So it was just a terrible, terrible experience. Thankfully I can see again, and I've had eye shots, and I'm alive, it's okay. But I remember being in the emergency room and just being so devastated, because it's like my relationship is falling apart, and I thought I could trust myself, my own abilities, but I can't even rely on myself. I can't even make my eyeball work, which other people can do. So how can I truly trust my abilities if my body can just fall apart like that? So then, second thing was wiped off my identity list. And I'm sure you guys can see where this is going, fun places. So then, at the same time, literally in the same month, my mom called me and she told me that she was diagnosed with cancer. Thankfully, a little bit later, it was fixed, it was fine. But then my grandpa died at the same time, so I found out that the family I prided myself in was no longer a thing I could put my identity in. And then, of course, because all of this was going on, I was not a good student. I was letting my grades drop, I was falling apart, and the last thing was wiped off my identity list. So, I'm sure if you guys took a look at your identity list and thought through if all of those things were wiped away, just how bad and terrible you would feel. And I faced the full force of what this can do. So I was having panic attacks like every single night, and I started doing counseling because all of these things that were going on. I was diagnosed with anxiety, depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, and I was just a complete wreck. And I know the reason that I got to that point was because I thought the reason that I mattered was because of the things on this list. And in reality, I should not have put my identity or my hope or anything like that in these things, because when they're all wiped away, I thought that I had nothing left. I thought that nothing mattered. And I just prayed to God, and I was like, why do I even have to be here? Like, there's nothing left for me. But through that hard time, I kind of had everything wiped away, but I had a lot of great people, pastors, teachers, mentors, sermons, Bible studies, all sorts of things that through the years really got me through this. It wasn't like a quick fix or anything, but I learned one lesson that was able to change my entire perspective. So all of these things had happened, and years later, I was still in the same scenario. I was single, I had all of these things, but I went from being really depressed and really upset to genuinely being extremely happy and extremely excited for life. And that is because of one key piece of information. And that is because I found out that my identity was that I was loved by God. And Pastor talked about this, so you guys know what I'm talking about already. But I think this is just such a simple phrase, and we literally learn it from the time we are little if we're Christians. Jesus loves me, this I know. But we just repeat it and we say it, and we don't really let it sink in and feel what it means. Because I think so many times I read this and I thought about it, but it was like, oh, this is like a fantasy story that I'm reading about, and I love reading about it and talking about it, but to actually apply it to my life, now that takes work, and that is hard, and that takes a lot of different things. So today I want to unpack this love by God, because I think if you're single, or even if you're not single, this will make all the difference to how you navigate this time in your life. So, love by God. The first most important thing is, who is God? So I have this Bible passage which I can sort of read. I'm going to turn to get the bigger text if I can get this microphone still in. Okay, so it says, "To whom will you compare me, or who is my equal? Says the Holy One. Lift up your eyes and look to the heavens. Who created all these? He who brings out the starry hosts one by one and calls forth each of them by name. Because of his great power and mighty strength, not one of them is missing. Why do you complain, Jacob? Why do you say, Israel? My way is hidden from the Lord. Or why am I still single? My cause is disregarded by God. Do you not know? Have you not heard? The Lord is the everlasting God, the creator of the ends of the earth. He will not grow tired or weary, and his understanding no one can fathom. He gives strength to the weary and increases the power of the weak. Even youths grow tired and weary, and young men stumble and fall. But those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint. So I just love this passage because it points out so many great things about God. God created the world. He's so powerful and so knowledgeable that no one can fathom what his understanding is. And he is the God who loves us. So I think just as important is what is our relationship with this super mighty and super powerful being. And we're going to take a look at our first bachelor, Jesus, and what he was doing on the cross and what he said to understand that a little more. So Jesus said on the cross, Father, I want those you have given me to be with me where I am and see my glory, the glory you have given me, because you loved me before the creation of the world. So I think there's kind of two main things here. God wants us to be with him, and he also wants us to experience his glory. So this is not like the specific way the Bible says that this happens. This is just how I picture how we come to this. So I feel like God was up in heaven, and he was experiencing all of his glory and all of his power, and he had everything he wanted, and just this perfect being, everything was there. And he was experiencing this, and it was great and everything, but he was like, you know what would make this even better? This would be better if I could experience it with Hannah, or with you, or with any of you guys. And so he's like, I want to experience it with these guys, so how am I going to do this? So he created the world. He created this beautiful place for us to live in. Then he decided what year we would be born, who our parents would be, who else would be alive when we were alive, and everything that would happen when we were there, so that we would grow in him. And then he knew we were going to screw up, so then he sent Jesus, and Jesus died and rose, so that no matter how many times we screwed up, we would still have the chance to be with God and experience his glory for all of eternity, because that is how much he loves us, which is really, really overwhelming, I think, if we truly think about it. And I think if we really believe that and we really force ourselves to know that that is true, then we can approach anything in our lives, like losing our identity, and realize we don't need anything but Jesus' love. So I'm going to give an example of this from C.S. Lewis, because he writes such good stuff. So has anyone read The Horse and His Boy? We got one, we got two. Yeah, thank you. Okay, does anyone care if I ruin the book for them? No, okay, lots of no's, good. I was gonna say just like cover your ears and hum if this happens, because I'm gonna try to give you like the majority of the plot of the book in a very short amount of time. So, the main character's name is Shasta, and just bear with me through this story, I promise it's worth it. So Shasta is in the sea, abandoned by his parents, and this group of fishermen come and find him, and they take him in to raise him and their family. But then one day, he finds out that they aren't that great. They decide to sell him into slavery. So he goes to the barn and starts hanging out with the horse, and finds out that the horse is a talking horse from Narnia, which is so cool. So both of them decide to escape to Narnia together. So they start their journey, the horse and the boy, as the book is so cleverly called, and they're going, and all of a sudden this lion comes out of nowhere and starts chasing them. And as the lion's chasing them, they kind of get drawn to this other person who is also running, and she is running away from an arranged marriage, and they journey together. And then as they journey, they run into the royalty from Narnia, who are supposed to go into arranged marriage with this other king guy, but they don't like it either. So I feel like C.S. Lewis is really like, yeah, you don't have to get married. Look, there's all these examples of people running away from it. I don't know, just my thought on part of this book. So they meet the Narnians. The Narnians need to escape before this kingdom attacks them, because they don't want to marry into this kingdom, so they all start running. And then, of course, another lion comes and chases Shasta, and then the horse and him get off, and then they are going to go warn the king of Narnia that this enemy army is coming to attack them, so they need to know and prepare. So then we find Shasta in this place where he is journeying by himself, and it's foggy, and all of a sudden he hears this voice. And the voice is God, I'll just tell you that. But he is just feeling so sorry for himself because he's like, I have had such a crazy, horrible life. Like, just think through all these terrible things that have happened. I was abandoned as a child, and then I was going to be sold into slavery, and then this happened, and then not one lion came, but 2 lions came, and he is just going through all of the horrible things that happened, and he starts talking to this mysterious voice, and that is where this amazing passage happens. So I'm going to pull it up, and I need to turn again so I can read this. So Shasta begins, "Do you think it was bad luck to meet so many lions?" said Shasta. "There was only 1 lion," said the voice. "What on earth do you mean? I've just told you that there were at least 2 lions the first night, and there was only 1, but he was swift of foot." "How do you know?" "I was the lion." And as Shasta gaped with open mouth and said nothing, the voice continued, "I was the lion who forced you to join with Arvis. I was the cat who comforted you among the houses of the dead. I was the lion who drove the jackals from you as you slept. I was the lion who gave the horses the new strength of fear for the last mile so that you should reach King Loon in time. And I was the lion you do not remember who pushed the boat in which you lay, a child near death, so that it came to shore where a man sat, wakeful at midnight to receive you." And I think this is so, so powerful to me. And I knew as I was reading this that I needed to not cry because it's so influential to me, because I feel like this shows so truly what God's relationship is to us. I think a lot of times I think God is just up in heaven and he doesn't care about what is going on in my life. But if we look at something like this, we know that he is super present and super active in what is going on every single day in our lives. And again, I'm going to say how I picture something, not that the Bible explicitly says this is what happens, but I feel like we're going to die, and we are going to be in this movie theater, and we're eating this great heavenly popcorn next to God, and he is going to roll the movie of our lives. And we have this idea of what happened in our lives. So we're like, this event happened, this happened, maybe this led to this, and maybe that's why it happened, but I'm not really sure. And we'll just kind of have our own narrative of what our lives are. But then I feel like God's going to start rolling the movie and show just exactly where he was every single moment of our life. So when we felt lonely, he will show that he was there right with us. When something terrible happened and we had no idea why, we'll see that God was working in that to let some other result happen. And I think he's just going to show us that every single step we took and every pain and agony we had, he was right there with us and he was working things out for our good. Because we know that for sure. God promises 2 things we know, and that's that he will never leave us and that he will work everything out for our good. So I feel like if we truly embrace that and we truly know that God is with us, that's going to change our identity, and that's going to make us look a lot different at our situation in life. So my first takeaway is that our identity is not in our relationship status. Our identity is that we are loved by God. And if we truly embrace this, then that whole list of things that are really hard about being single, and this doesn't even encompass everything, all of those things start going away. Because when we think, I am so sick of being a third wheel, we know God is working in this moment, and he has me here for a reason. And if this is what he thinks is best, he is so much more knowledgeable than I am, so he's got to have a plan for this. There's got to be a reason for this. So all of those things go away, and it makes it so much better. And another C.S. Lewis quote, "He who has God and everything else has no more than he who has God only." So whether you're in a relationship, whether you're single, we all have God, and that's the only thing that matters. So now I'm going to move on to the second part. I feel like knowing that my identity is the fact that I am loved by God was a complete game changer for my life. But being single for a very long time, there's still one thing that kind of kept haunting me consistently through singleness. And that was the fact that I knew God loved me, I knew God had a plan, but I felt like I was just trapped in a waiting room of singleness. And I was sitting in this waiting room of singleness, and my friends would be in relationships, and then they'd join me for a very short period of time, and then they'd go back into a relationship, and they'd be done. And I was just like, God, why have I been here for so long? What is the point? Every single day seems meaningless. It seems like day after day goes by and nothing changes. So what is the purpose of this in my life right now? But then I learned the story of our next bachelor, who may or may not have been single, Lazarus, and I learned the lesson that there is a purpose to waiting rooms, and it was very, very helpful to me. So we will talk about Lazarus, So this is how the story starts. So now a man named Lazarus was sick. He was from Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha. So the sisters sent word to Jesus, "Lord, the one you love is sick." Pretty straightforward. Lazarus is sick. Now Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. So when he heard that Lazarus was sick, he fill in the blank. What this says is Jesus loved them, and then he found out Lazarus was sick, so he did what? And I think if it were me and I found out that one of my relatives was sick or one of my friends was sick, I would run to my car and then drive to the hospital immediately. Or I don't know, I'd run to my car and then run back in my house and put out a bunch of cat food and then run back to my car and go to the hospital to make sure things are okay. But that's not what Jesus did. Granted, he probably didn't have a cat, but he does something very, very different. So when Jesus found out Lazarus was sick, he stayed where he was for 2 more days. Now, that seems super confusing to me of why he would do that. And if this was a doctor and they found out that someone was sick and they could fix them, that'd basically be malpractice for them to wait. So why would Jesus do this? We'll keep reading the story. So Jesus finally decides to come to Lazarus. And on his arrival, Jesus found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb for 4 days. Okay, Jesus missed the mark there, it seems like a little bit. But then Jesus came to the outside of the city. Martha came and talked to him, and then got Mary, and then Mary came, and this is what happened. So when Mary reached the place where Jesus was and saw him, she fell at his feet and said, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." When Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who had come along with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in spirit and troubled. "Where have you laid him?" he asked. "Come and see, Lord," they replied. Jesus wept. Then the Jews said, "See how he loved him?" But some of them said, "Could not he who opened the eyes of the blind man have kept this man from dying?" So there's 2 words in here that stick out to me, and it's a Bible passage I feel like all of us know, and that is that Jesus wept. So I think a lot of times when we feel trapped in waiting rooms of singleness or maybe school or anything else, it feels, again, like God is just watching us and kind of like, okay, you're going to get through this. Good for you. You're going to do it. But in reality here, that's not what we see. So I'm going to ruin this story for you also if you don't know, but Jesus raises Lazarus from the dead. So if you didn't know that, whoa, so cool. But Jesus knew in a matter of minutes, moments, whatever it was, that he was going to raise Lazarus from the dead. So when he approached these people, in his mind, he would have known, okay, I'm going to raise them from the dead. You guys are super, super upset, but this is going to get better real soon. So if I was Jesus, I'd probably kind of approach these upset people with a smirk on my face like, it's going to get better, guys, don't worry. But that is not what Jesus did. Jesus knew there was going to be a happy ending, but he decided and he felt what they felt with them. He actually wept. He felt their hearts break. He felt the same way as them and put himself in the same situation as him. So don't ever feel like you are going through something alone and God doesn't care. God's right with you and his heart is breaking right with yours. So I think that's a really cool detail of this story. And then, as I said, Lazarus was raised from the dead. So Jesus called in a loud voice, "Lazarus, come out." The dead man came out, his hands and feet wrapped with strips of linen and a cloth around his face. Jesus said to them, "Take off the grave clothes and let him go." So, super cool story, right? Lazarus is sick, Lazarus dies, Lazarus is raised from the dead. But there is still that super strange detail for me of why did Jesus let Lazarus wait? Why did he wait 2 days to go and help him? So 3 times in the story, Jesus says why he did these actions. And I can't read it again because it's in yellow, so I'm going to turn around. So in the first place, he said, no, it's for God's glory, so that God's Son may be glorified through it. And then when he's talking to his disciples, he says, so that you may believe. And then as he's talking about the crowd that has formed because Lazarus died, he says that they may believe that you sent me. So Jesus decided to wait, and from this we know that it's so Jesus could increase his glory so that more people would believe, all those kind of things. So let's see what the result of his actions were here. So, first passage. Because Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead, here's what happened. Meanwhile, a large crowd of Jews found out that Jesus was there and came. not only because of him, but also to see Lazarus, whom he had raised from the dead. So the chief priests made plans to kill Lazarus as well. I wonder if Jesus would raise him from the dead again. For on account of him, many of the Jews were going over to Jesus and believing in him. So all of these people believed in Jesus because he raised Lazarus from the dead. And then here's one other passage, which I think is pretty cool too. So now the crowd that was with him when he called Lazarus from the tomb and raised him from the dead continued to spread the word. Many people, because they had heard that he had performed the sign, went out to meet him. So the Pharisees said to one another, "See, this is getting us nowhere. Look how the whole world has gone after him." You can just feel the fury of them. So let's just think about this holistically. So Jesus could have gone and healed Lazarus right away when he was sick. And that is what Mary and Martha asked for. That's what Lazarus was asking for. But instead, Jesus chose to wait. And in that waiting, Mary and Martha, who he loved, and Lazarus, who he loved, they suffered more, and Lazarus even died. And I can't imagine what the sisters felt like going through that. So Jesus allowed them to wait. He allowed them to suffer even more, but then he chose an end result that was so much better than the thing that they originally asked for. He raised Lazarus from the dead. So I feel like that's such an incredible story, that if you feel like you're asking God for something, get me out of this waiting room. What are you doing in this waiting room? God's actually working things out for his plan. He's actually working things out for a more and glorious, better plan than we could ever imagine. And we might not see what the result is on this side of death, but I'm sure once we die, we're gonna be like, oh my goodness, that was so cool what you were doing there. So if you feel like you're trapped in a waiting room, or you feel like you're trapped in singleness, know that God is doing something in there. He's not just letting you waste your days away. He's working things out for his glorious plan. So that is my second takeaway. God keeps us in waiting rooms so that he can advance his glorious plans. So I want to tell you a story about how I saw this firsthand, and it's not as cool as being raised from the dead. That would be really, really awesome to talk about, so I wish I could do that. But I'm going to tell you the story about me going to Skellig Island. So does anyone recognize this island at all? We've got an MSOE crowd, so I didn't know if someone would. What'd you say?
It looks like a Max screensaver.
This is the island in the most recent Star Wars films, which I could ruin for you also if you haven't seen them, but we'll just leave it at that. So it's where Luke Skywalker is, and if you recognize these scenes, they were filmed at this place called Skellig Island. And Skellig Island is a real place, but not in that world, it's different, but is located off the southwest coast of Ireland. So a few years ago, my parents agreed to go to Europe with me, and we started planning an Ireland vacation. And I was like, ooh, this island is there, and I totally want to go because that's going to be the closest thing I ever have to being in Star Wars. So my parents were like, yeah, cool, let's do it. So we watched the safety video on going to this island, and I think it's just every way that you can die by going to the island. So first of all, you have to take this little private boat, in the ocean, and it doesn't look that far when you look at the map, but like when you're in the boat, it seems a lot farther. And you take it in the ocean, and Ireland is known for its bad weather. So there's typically these huge waves, and if you're in a tiny boat, it just seems very, very intimidating. So first they're like, okay, you might get motion sickness, or you might fall off the boat and drown, just the first way that you could die. And then you get to the island, and it's like this rocky water that you're on, and then you have this stone thing that you have to jump onto. And they're like, if you do not time your jumping properly, you will get smashed between a rock and the boat. So you have to do that. And I was like, okay, another red flag. I should not be doing this. And then as you're on the island, there's these 600 stone stairs that were built by monks 1,000 years ago. And there's no hand railing. You just go up these stairs, and there is a 600-foot drop-off, as you can see on the screen. So if you stumble or if you trip, you are going to go down and fall. And there's part of the path where you're walking straight, and then you have to take a 90-degree turn, otherwise you will just go off the cliff. So that seemed like another giant red flag to me. And then the thing that was hardest for me is it was a 6-hour journey, and there was no bathroom. And I'm the kind of person that if there's not a bathroom, like I need to use one immediately. So I was like, I don't think I can do this. So my parents watched this and they're like, oh, we're not going. This seems way too terrible. And I was like, well, when else am I going to get this opportunity? I'm going to do it, whatever. So this place is a historical site of Ireland. So only so many people can go every single year, and that is the limit for how many people can go. So there's one day a year where you can sign up to go to this island. So I knew the very second that the sign up happened, and I had my mom ready to go online, I was ready to go online, and then the second hit, and we tried to get on, and we tried to get on, and we tried to get on, and after half an hour, we finally got on, and every single spot was booked. It was crazy. So I figured I couldn't go. I had planned the entire trip so that we could fit it into a certain point, and it just kind of turned out like, oh, we can't go. Maybe I would have died, so maybe that's why I'm not supposed to go. I don't know. This could be for a reason. But then a few months later, I was looking before we went to Ireland, and the site came up, and my heart skipped a beat because there was one spot open on a day that we were going to be in Ireland. So I snagged it, and it wasn't the day I was originally planning. It was the total opposite end of the trip, but we worked it out, and we made it so it could happen. So I did not want to get my hopes up because they're like, the weather could make this thing not happen in a second because it's far too dangerous. So the night came before, and I didn't get a phone call that it was canceled. And then the morning came, and no one called saying it was canceled. So my parents drove me to the dock, and they dropped me off, and it was insane. The sea was just so smooth. Like, the local Irish people told me they had never seen such a beautiful day in their entire lives. So we started making our journey in this boat, and there's no motion sickness. There's just dolphins like jumping in the wake of our boat, like this glorious, majestic thing. And then there are these puffins flying over us, which have like these huge bodies, and it seems like they can't keep their bodies up in the air. And then our guide is like, oh, over there is a island that was in Harry Potter. And I was like, oh, I didn't even know that. So it was just this beautiful, beautiful journey. And then we made it to the island, and the sea was smooth, so I didn't have to be afraid of getting smushed between the rock and the boat because I could just walk off, and it was completely fine. And then I started making my way. Here's a picture of when we got there. I started making my way up the stairs, and I was surprised that I was not afraid of the heights. It seemed like there was maybe a little bit of rolling you would do before just falling off the ledge, so like maybe that's why I felt a little bit better. I'm not totally sure. So I journeyed up here. That's the rock that was in Star Wars. And then I got to the very top, which is where the beehive domes are, if those look familiar from Star Wars at all. And I got up there, and it was just the most majestic moment where the sun started shining, and then the guide started talking about the origins of this island. So she said that 1,000 years ago, monks used to come to this island, and they'd come for the sole purpose of getting away from people and just spending time with God. So they'd literally go, there were like two peaks, they'd go to the one peak that was facing where America is, and they'd just pray out the unknown because they didn't know America was there, and they'd just be like, God, we know that you have the unknown, we know that you have the future, please be with us, all of those kind of things. And as she was telling this story, I looked at my phone, and I looked at the date, and I noticed that it was May 31st. And that day doesn't mean anything to you guys, but to me, it was the day that I was supposed to get married on. And every single day that day had passed every year, I just let myself completely break down and be upset about how my life had turned out. But on this day, it turned out to be one of the best days in my entire life. And I just kind of felt like as I was there and learning about the monks that came and everything, that God was like, see how much I changed in your life in just a few years. See how I took this horrible thing and turned it into this absolutely wonderful thing. And if I can do that in a matter of years, think of how else I'm going to be working in all this pain and all this chaos and work things out for your good. So this was just a miraculous moment in my life, and I feel like it was really showing that God has been working in the waiting for me. He has catered my life so much better than what I had planned for, and just trusting him and following him has made things so much better than I could ever imagine. So if you feel like you are trapped in a waiting room of singleness or anything else, just remember the story of Lazarus. There are so many similar stories in the Bible when you start looking, and it's happened to me as well. So that is kind of the two main things I wanted to talk about tonight. I just want to wrap up by giving a few tips on singleness, which is basically a high-level look at what my book is like. So these are like the fast, here you go, here's tips on singleness, and I go in much more depth in my book about this. So the first one is embrace your identity as loved by God rather than single. We talked about that one. I think we're good on that one. Then the second one is make a list of your single struggles and pray about them. So I think me just literally making a list of everything that was hard and then praying about it and digging into God's word about it really helped to remedy everything. Because if you are dealing with something like loneliness, then you can look at someone like Jeremiah, whose hometown hated him and tried to kill him, and literally everyone hated him, and they put him in solitary confinement and like threw him in a pit to just die. Like, he knew what loneliness was, and he got through that. So how can we get through it also? Then my third tip is always have 1 Corinthians 7 verse 8 ready. It is good for them to stay unmarried. I think there is a lot of society pressure to get married, and I know my mom, my grandma, so many people have been like, when are you going to get married? And if you just say it is good for them to stay unmarried, like the Bible says in response, it just kind of takes that pressure off yourself to say why you are single. It's like, no, God has a plan. That's why I'm single. God thinks that being unmarried is cool, so it's fine. Know that God is working in your waiting. We just covered that one. Since you are single, decide to make the most out of this season of your life. So this one I really based off of Joseph, where he probably had plans for his life, and then he was thrown into slavery by his brothers, and all of his plans were probably wiped from his mind of what he could do. But he decided to take that moment in his life and make the most out of it. And then even though he did that, he still got thrown into slavery. But he decided, I'm going to work as hard as I can and do everything I can do because I know God's with me. I've got God on my side. I'm going to do this. So I feel like it's a fact that you're single at certain points in your life. Either you can be upset about it and be angry and just wallow in it, or you can decide, I am going to make the most out of this situation and I am going to live to my full potential in God and trust in God. It's really your decision which way you want to go with it. Then spend time each day focusing on the love and promises of God. So I think just constantly reminding yourself of my identity is in God, and this is who God is. This is who is with me every single day. I think that always puts it in perspective and is super, super helpful. Then surround yourself with people who will uplift you in your singleness. So when I first became single, I realized that there were a lot of friends who were like, you need to get married and have children. We'll keep setting you up with all these people. And then there were the friends who were like, hey, it's great you're single, and we are going to help you with your dreams and your ambitions and everything that is super, super important to you right now, and not just ask you about who you want to date or why your life is single. And those are the people that really uplifted me, and those were the people I needed to surround myself with, because they weren't trying to push me to complete me, as they would say, or be something that I didn't need to be right now. And just about that, I feel like it wasn't all single people who were helping uplift me. A lot of the people who are super important and super impactful to helping me with singleness are people who are married and people who have kids. Two of the biggest people that have helped me are the guy who designed my cover. He is married with 2 children, and then his wife actually edited and helped me do my entire book. So like, those are the people that are so, so helpful, and they're not even in the same situation as me. And then 8, pay attention to what God has uniquely called you to do and pursue it. I think if you pursue the dreams that God's placed on your heart and you are fully embracing them and going after them, then you're not going to care if you're single or you're in a relationship. Like, you're going to be like, yeah, I would like that. But you're like, I'm going to be so excited every single day because I am waking up and I am pursuing my passion of what God has put on my heart to do. So like, for me, that was writing my book, where it's like, today I'm like, cool, I get to go talk about being single. Like, this is so cool. And it doesn't matter if I'm in a relationship or not. It's just super cool that I get to be here talking about this, and that makes me excited for life. And then with that, if you don't know what your passion is, I'd say spend time serving other people rather than yourself. So the way I've heard this, if you don't know what that looks like, is think about the things that break your heart in the world. So like, for me, it's like human trafficking is just such a ridiculous thing that really, really breaks my heart. So how can I become involved in that? And if I'm involved with something like that, then I am not looking at myself and going, why am I single? I'm looking at those other people and saying, how can I help serve them? And then the last one is let your single life be an example of the love of God. So I think this is such a huge opportunity. And I'm going to tell you one of my most awkward stories to go with this one, so please don't judge me too much for this one. So a few years ago, I went to a work conference, and I'm going to blame Arnold Schwarzenegger because he was speaking at this work conference. So I went to go and see him, and he was a lot shorter than I actually expected, so that was kind of interesting. But when I was at this work conference, I started talking to the guy next to me, and he was French, and we became friends, and he introduced me to all of his college buddies, and it was super, super cool. We got dinner, and we spent the rest of the evening together just talking, and I didn't really know French people before, but it was fun. I was joking with them that the only French I knew was ho ho ho, and they kept on doing that, but French people don't actually do that, guys. I found that out. So it was interesting because as I was with them, all these people at the conference kind of would oh, these guys, and I was like, whoa, you guys know everyone. But then I went home that night, and I Googled their first name in Paris, and their Wikipedia pages came up, and they're politicians and business owners and these insane people, and I was I just ate dinner with them and was going ho ho ho, and oh, that's interesting. So it's quite an experience. But then a few months later, for work, I was able to go to Paris. Again, life got so much better after MSOE. I had a meeting in southern France, and then the next week I had a meeting in Spain, so I had to spend some time somewhere in between. So I went to Paris by myself, and I texted these guys to see if anyone was free, and one of them was free, so he invited me to come to his business, his office, which was right next to the Eiffel Tower and had this private garden overlooking everything, and I was just this is insane, and his office was bigger than the place that I live. I could not believe this. This is where the story gets really awkward. So we were in his office, and I don't know, maybe I misread something in French culture, but he for some reason thought that I was going to have sex with him. And it was just super weird. And I was no, I cannot sleep with you because I am a Christian. And he's oh, whatever, what does that even mean? And he's do you have a boyfriend or something? And I was no, I'm single. And he's wait, so you're single and you won't sleep with me? And I'm yes, because I am a Christian. And he was just so shocked and did not know what to say. He was you seem so normal and you seem so happy, and this is the way that you live your life? He's I didn't think anyone lived this way. This is crazy. And he just kept on saying, I'm speechless. I'm speechless. I didn't know anyone was like this. And I wish, we continued to talk about Christianity and why, yes, I am happy, even though I'm not living my life the way he is. And I wish I could say he became Christian and all these things happened, but I can't say that. I don't know how the Holy Spirit worked in him that day. But I can say that being single and truly following what God says for us is a way that we can differentiate ourselves from everyone else in the world. Singleness is looked at as something that is sad and people are unhappy, but if we are truly living as loved by God and living in his completeness and holiness and trying to follow him, we can totally set ourselves apart from other single people in the world and shine and be that example of what it looks like to be loved by God. So I just want to encourage you guys that God has that very, very special purpose in singleness. And I've seen that time, I've seen many other times, similar stories, too many to count, to see just what impact that makes. So be encouraged that this is a very, very good thing. Those are my tips on singleness. I wrote down tips for people who are not single to love singles as well on the sheet, but I timed this last night and it was over an hour, so I had to take out something. Sorry, guys. So that is the end of my presentation. If you have any questions, please let me know. Anything. Thank you.